Do you feel like there's something wrong with you, that you're inherently flawed, that you're just not good enough because you're engaging in binge eating day after day, month after month, maybe year after year? I am here to tell you it is not your fault. And I absolutely stick by those words. Why am I saying this? Well, today I have 5 questions that will really help you to see that there are lots of forces that have been working upon you that really kind of pushed you into binge eating. These 5 questions, what they're going to do is they're going to put into context your behavior. This is important because then you can have a deeper awareness of why you engage in binge eating. And it can help you to see that, like I said, binge eating is not your fault. And when you have a deep understanding that binge eating is not your fault, you can really start to cultivate this self-acceptance. And self-acceptance is crucial for eating disorder recovery. If you don't have self-acceptance, you're not going to be trusting yourself. And when you don't trust yourself, you're not going to be able to trust the messages that your body's giving you. So you're not even going to know when you need to be eating, when you don't need to be eating, when you're thirsty, when you're not, and even beyond food, when you need rest, when you don't, when you need movement, when you need to be around people, or when you need solitude, when you need to be working, or when you needing to take a break. This is all about trusting your body to know when your body really benefits from doing all these different things. Another reason that having this awareness is important and trusting yourself and self-acceptance is important is because you might not even hear the message that your body's giving you at all. So many of us that are deep in the throes of binge eating and an eating disorder can't even hear the messages anymore because we have shut our eyes and closed our ears and pushed them as far away from us as we possibly can because we just don't trust ourselves and believe that there is something inherently wrong with us. And that's why it's really important to cultivate self-acceptance so that we can begin to trust those messages again and give our body exactly what it needs. Now, asking these 5 questions helps you zoom out so you can really see all the things that have been acting upon you that have led you to binge eating. And then you're not acting on a surface level explanation for your behavior so you can actually get at what's really going on. This will help you to make a lasting, sustainable change in your life instead of just a surface area change based on you being not good enough, which actually isn't the real issue at all and won't solve your problem because you don't need fixing. What you need is to really be able to live in your body, full embodiment, and be able to trust what your body is telling you. So let's not hesitate. Let's get into those 5 questions. Question number 1. Does berating and punishing myself actually help me to stop or reduce my binge eating behavior? Is you thinking that you're the problem, that there's something inherently wrong with you and that you need to punish yourself and restrict yourself and not trust yourself, is that actually leading you to reduce your binge eating behavior? Maybe the answer shows up right away for you, maybe it doesn't. I invite you to be patient and let the answer show up as it is. And I also invite you to welcome in the discomfort that the answer may bring. Because anytime we are thinking in a certain way and an answer shows up that's completely different than the way we were thinking, that can invoke a lot of discomfort. And in order to receive the answer, I'm inviting you to sit with that discomfort. Just because you have an answer, it doesn't mean that you have to take action. You take action when you're good and ready and when you want to because you want to. Number 2, what is binge eating trying to tell you? Binge eating is a messenger. It is telling you what's going on. It's telling you that something needs care. It's telling you that something needs attending to. Your challenge is to pay attention and notice. When you do this, you're putting your binge eating behavior in context because then you're actually willing to really have a deep understanding and awareness of what's really going on instead of believing that there's something wrong with you and that you're not good enough and that something needs fixing. If you believe this story, then you're going to try to fix something and you're not going to have a sustainable recovery. When you actually have patience and let the answer show up, you will be able to deepen your recovery because you'll be getting at more of the root of the issue. Number 3, How is the culture contributing to your binge eating behavior? This is a zoom out question, looking at the culture at large and seeing how it really could contribute to you engaging in binge eating. When we look at our culture, it's capitalism, it is profit over lives. This is painful. We all internalize it. It's pretty easy to see how a binge eating disorder or any eating disorder can really be a form of coping in a society that really doesn't care about our life. Within that society, thin bodies are given much more privilege and access. We see this with job opportunities. You're more likely of getting a job if you have a thin body. There's more clothing in your size. There's more representation in media and advertising, and the list goes on. And this creates fat phobia for the whole society because the society sees that those in thin bodies are given access, are given privilege, and those in fat bodies are not and are oppressed. And so this system works to keep fat-bodied people down and to keep thin-bodied people disciplined so that they don't go into the category of fat and start losing these privileges and this access. Another way is that in our society, there's so many divisions and so many ways of labeling and classifying people that can give people privileges or oppressions. So in our society, white, male, thin, cis, hetero, rich, educated, able-bodied people are given much more privilege and much more access. Black, women, poor, uneducated, disabled, queer, trans bodies are oppressed. They are denied access. And this is a painful, oppressive society to live in. And again, like with the thin and fat example, this is also used to discipline all people. So even if you are in the most privileged of bodies, you realize that you have to maintain this status to maintain these privileges. It's not unconditional. And this is painful to live in. And so an eating disorder is clear to see how it is an attempt to numb this, is an attempt to deal with this system that is so oppressive, and is a way to, if we are in a body that is not valued in our society, trying to shape shift our body can be an attempt at survival. Also within our society, capitalism and white supremacy has tentacles in everything, and there's traits to white supremacy and capitalism, such as individualism, perfectionism, binary thinking, which is either or thinking, quantity over quality, and the list goes on. And when we look at eating disorders, we see that a lot of people that have suffered with eating disorders display these traits because we have internalized in our society that if we want to survive, we need these traits, and these traits are given merit, that they are celebrated. And so we have noticed that, and we have developed and perfected these traits to enhance our survival. So these are just some ways that the culture has really shaped people developing eating disorders. So number 4, how does your family history contribute to your binge eating behavior? Now pause. This is a juicy one because we're talking about family business. Go slow if you need to, take your time, maybe use support, especially if this could possibly bring up old wounds and old traumas. On the flip side, there's a lot of information there. I know that you might like to think that you're completely independent of your family and you don't have any of their traits and that you don't display any of their behaviors. With a little inspection though and investigation, you might find that there's a lot in common, and it might help to explain your own issues with binge eating. Now, this can happen in a lot of different ways. It can happen by being at family gatherings, by listening to people tell stories. I think that's really one of the best ways. It could be looking at maybe journals, if anyone's kept a journal, or looking at photo albums, or looking at home videos. It can be through just asking questions of your family members. So there's lots of ways to go about this, and there's lots of questions to ask, such as, what is your family's history with food? What's your family's history with body and with movement? How much does your family really buy into and believe in the capitalist and white supremacist traits of individualism, of perfectionism, of either or binary thinking, or that thinking there's only one way to do something? How much have they passed these traits on to you? What is your family's history with their family? What was their relationship with food and body growing up and with exercise? How often is food and movement and body talked about within your family? So these questions are infinite. I'm sure you can come up with a lot more than what I've just presented. And really, this is an exploration for life that can really help to explain why we may get caught up in struggling with binge eating. And last but not least, how is history affecting your binge eating behavior? Just the name tells us a lot. His story. So just that leaves out at least half of the population. And also, if we've learned anything about history, it's that it's still enacting itself on us today and repeating itself today. If you've learned anything in 2020, I hope it would be that. Right now, I'm currently reading a book called Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings. Maybe you all have heard of this book. It's fantastic. I hope that everyone is going to get a chance to read it because it really traces the roots of diet culture in the United States. And she's starting in Renaissance Europe in the late 1400s, early 1500s, and she's describing artwork. I'm only a few pages in, so this is what I've read so far. And that in the artwork, you see that black women and white women are both depicted as having thick, voluptuous bodies, and they were thought to be equal. The bodies were of equal beauty. And they also had this thick, voluptuous, long hair. And the people in these pictures, it's important to mention that the black women in these pictures were enslaved people who were brought into Europe through the port cities against their will. And they're still depicted though as bodily equals. And it isn't until the slave trade starts to pick up steam in Europe and become more profitable that this starts to change. And now black women depicted in European artwork of the Renaissance, I think the late Renaissance, it could be getting into the Enlightenment, but I'm not positive about that. They are now drawn and painted as being smaller, as being maybe less well, as having shorter hair that's closer to their head, not as thick of hair. And this was a way to differentiate between black and white. And notice that the differentiation is being played out on female bodies. So that's another thing that's really important historically to look at, because we know that female bodies have a history of being objectified, and that is still very much the case today in 2020. This was a way that artists were trying to send a message to the public that, look, there is an inherent difference between black and white. And this was used as a tool to try to get the public to be okay and approve of the transatlantic slave trade. So that's just one snippet of history that really tells us a lot about our own eating disorder behavior today. And there's a lot more we can dive into, because really anything that happened in history has an effect on us today. So that's it. Those are the 5 questions. And I hope at this point in the video, you're able to get a sense that you can zoom out and really see that there were so many things happening that were not personal, that you had nothing to do with, that you had no control over, that led to your binge eating. And this can help you to cultivate that self-acceptance that is truly necessary to make change and to start to live a life that's more meaningful, to rewrite history. I hope this does bring you some peace and get you excited to really dig into some of this history, some of our culture, some of the family history, to really have a better understanding of why you may have engaged in binge eating in the first place. For watching, if you want more videos like this, make sure that you subscribe so you can get more videos and content related to eating disorders and eating disorder recovery. And if you want to watch the latest video about 7 ways to push back against a toxic diet culture message that says there's something wrong with you for binge eating, you are going to want to watch this video. Thanks a lot. Take care.